Alright, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another video critique. So this time around we're going to look at your distressed effects, and since they are the same images that we just talked about the other day, I'm going to keep these critiques a little shorter overall, and just kind of go into, basically if the effect worked well with the image, and if you did the effect correctly, or if not correctly, at least in an interesting way. So having said that, this time around, your group is going to be Stephanie, Abel, Dorothy, and Teresa. So let's start off by looking at Stephanie's work here. Alright, so again, these are images that we've seen. I'm going to quickly run through them, just so we can briefly look at what this version of them looks like. Oops. Okay. Alright, so let's start with number one here up top. Film grain is definitely, that looks correct. Now the images aren't, they don't necessarily look that much like emulsion edges. Basically what you want emulsion edges to look like is that the image itself has been applied to the background, basically with a large brush. In terms of how successful I think these images are, or this, I should say, these emulsion edges on this image, they're okay. I think on some of these I feel like you're taking a little bit too much of the image out here. For example, like an image, like an area like this or like that. In terms of overall effect on the image itself, I feel kind of neutral about that. Let's go to this one. Now, while this is essentially the same sort of edges, I feel like it does work a little bit better here. That might be because sort of the edge of this image is black rather than white, but I do think it works a little bit better there. Sort of does work as a framing device around the image. I think maybe I would just like to see slightly less of it. And you have film grain on this image. If you guys recall, this was not my favorite image of the group. I do like the film grain on it. I think it does make it look like more like an image shot on film. I wish I had the original up in front of me here, because it does. I feel like this one has more contrast in it. It looks contrastier to me. Anyway, I feel like this guy's not getting quite as lost as he was before, although it definitely, the color version, he definitely does pop a little bit out from this background more, like when this is, blue and this is a little more green in here. I think probably the image that I found most improved was this one. It kind of looks like more of a, almost like a canvas effect more than anything. That sort of, it's obviously not film grain. It doesn't really look like crinkled paper. It looks like, yeah, basically like canvas. Like you printed this on canvas and it gave you that sort of slightly rougher, more textured look. I did also, I like this image quite a bit in the last version that we saw. But I do think that textured look does add something to the overall image itself. So there you go, Stephanie. And again, I'm going to shoot through these kind of quickly because we have more or less talked about them and their merits as images. But I do want to briefly touch on how the different effects that you did sort of affected how these look. Alright. So now Abel did he went in sort of a different direction. It looks like he yeah, so you did it with all four and then selected one. So, oh no, I didn't notice this the last time I went through. It looks like you've added some stuff in here within the crinkling. Or like you maybe wrote on the paper before you crinkled and scanned it. That adds an interesting element to the whole thing. I would say between the four, the wrinkle paper, I would agree with your choice there. I mean, one of them is obviously still the original image, but I do really like this image. And it's funny, I didn't even notice this last time around, this little bit of thing here. Yeah, I feel like this is a successful addition. This image already has a ton of texture, and this does add some more to that. I think you're getting right up to the edge of where that would start to interfere with the image. Like if this was, say, like 20% higher opacity on your crinkled paper effect, I think it would be to the point where it started to take away from the image, but I think you definitely restrained yourself before you got there. So yeah. So now again, I would say I like the wrinkle paper on that, although you did do emulsion edges here. So I would say something similar to what I said with Stephanie's images. This isn't exactly the look. Having said that, it's not really distracting. Yeah, I don't feel like it takes anything away from the image. I think that maybe not necessarily with this image, but with certain images this could potentially add something to it. So, but I just don't know if that's what's happening here. Go ahead. Okay. Oh, see, now I like this. I think you probably chose, I'm going to guess, film grain. Is that the one we haven't seen yet? But I don't specifically remember. Okay, good. I couldn't remember from looking at it before if that was the one that you chose. Yeah, I think that this, with the shallow depth of field, I think this is one that's fairly well suited to most of these effects. So this is one maybe where this looks a little more like it goes with the image. I don't know if it's the texture, the grass and the trees, or the way you fill up the frame, but I feel like that does kind of work well. And I actually think this does work well too. In terms of film grain, yeah, it's correctly applied, and it does sort of look like it could be shot on film. Alright, and then last but not least, again, I think that's a cool excuse me. Okay, and then you want film grain again. I would say of all the four that you included here, this one does look the most like it could be shot on film, so film grain is a good effect to add to that. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with that judgment. I do like the film grain on this one, for the reason I just mentioned. So let's jump over to Dorothy's work. Now this is getting a little closer to that emulsion edge look. It still feels a little bit like, so you kind of have these like rough things like this going on. This is sort of what you're getting, but it still kind of looks like you probably painted, especially with that, like you painted the white on top of the image itself. And I think it's tough because really what you'd want to do when I do this and try and get the edges, what I'll actually do is start with a white a white backdrop that's the same dimensions as this, or even like copy the background layer, and then in between the two you know, the background layer and then the copy layer, you can actually sandwich in just a, you know, a layer that's filled with white, and then you sort of, or you can even put that white layer on top, and then you just sort of use the brush and you actually brush out the inside area, as opposed to, you know, having the image, choosing white, and then brushing out along the outside. I mean, it does tend to get a little bit closer to that emulsion edge look that that we're going for here. Now it looks like you also have some sort of white kind of coming in here. I'm kind of neutral on that. I don't mind it so much here. I don't necessarily like it as much in these areas where it's kind of coming over the image. So I think that that could potentially be effective sort of more on the edges like this. Like, I feel like it works here, and it works less here. That's a little distracting there. So let's go ahead and look at this. It looks like film grain again, I'm guessing. Yeah, you can really see it in here. This does still look pretty much like a digital image. Something about the it has what, like a less of a gamut range, less of a tonal range overall. It sort of makes me think of it as still a digital image. This one I like. Obviously, looking at this image before, I liked this one quite a bit. And I think that that little bit of textured thing, I mean, it's already, as before talking about Abel's image, this was kind of a lot of different textures put together in this image before. I think, again, the extra texture, I feel like that works. You know, again, I would say the same thing that I said to Abel, and that is Dorothy, that much more of this would have kind of pushed it over the edge, but to me it sort of looks almost like this is printed on some textured paper, which I think could work pretty well for that image. Alright, and then last but not least, let's look at Teresa's images here. And so okay, now this is a pretty good example. Now see what she did on the edges here, how it looks like a fairly large brush applied the actual image itself and that sort of black background. This is a lot closer to what this looks like when you actually do it in the darkroom. It's a little bit, looks like you kind of blurred the corners here, and that blur just got a little bit onto that border right there, but so far this is the most accurate, I would say accurate example of what this looks like, because it looks pretty much how this effect would look on, you know, if you were doing it for real, let's say. In terms of this, I think that this is actually really effective here. I think a lot of these too are going to be pretty effective on your images, because you have a lot of things in your image that are sort of relating to distressed things. You have, you know, sort of the roughness of the stone, the roughness of this. So your content of your image would really suggest something like this. Anyways, especially either this one or this one. Let's see, film grain, emulsion edges, wrinkled paper. I think that, again, I would say that this adds a lot. These are really definitely the kinds of images to add it to. I would say emulsion edges here. Crinkle paper, wrinkled paper. I would say I'm a little on the fence as to whether I think that is adding anything to the content. I mean, obviously this was the assignment, so I would never judge you too harshly for following the letter of the assignment. But I also want to, you know, just give you the perspective of, you know, going forward from this assignment, you know, what sort of things you would use this with. So yeah, I think I really like that. That's very cool. And the film grain showed up pretty well on this too. Now, again, this is the sort of image that looks a lot like an image shot on film, so that grain is really pretty effective here. So yeah, nice, Teresa. I think all of these images were improved on yours by the various effects. You know, at least one of the four was an improvement. Alright, so yeah, this was definitely a little bit more of a brief video. But yeah, again, I didn't want to belabor and, you know, just go over and over the stuff I talked about last time. So, this time around, the word that you should post below the link to this video, letting me know that you watched it, is ghost, as in a scary, spectral, you know, poltergeist or something. Anyway, so go ahead and post the word ghost. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching this, and back again next week